What's up everybody, it's your boy PUBSKI here, and today I'll be giving you my best 1v1 tips and tricks in the firing range. Let's hop right into it. So one of the first things that I do is I always try to figure out what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses. For example, what are you better at than your enemy, right? Like, are you better with your R99 spray than your enemy? Do you have a better wingman spray? Maybe your R9 is better than the enemy's wingman. Maybe your wingman is better than the enemy's R9. You really want to play around and see what works best for you. See what you're more skillful in and see where you lack in terms of your enemy. Figure out your strong points and stick to them. So let me give you an example. Say if you win 90% of your fights on the head glitch, right? Well, if you win 90%, then just challenge the head glitch every single time. If the enemy, continues peeking the head glitch, well, you're probably going to win. However, say if you lose 90% of your fights on the head glitch, and rather than continuously going up, dying, going up and dying, going up and dying, rather than playing from the head glitch, as soon as you guys are ready to start 1v1ing, rush him from one of the sides, and then just that way, you guys will have a straight spray off rather than trying to fight each other off of a head glitch. You always want to figure out, are you better at poking someone, or maybe you're just better at spraying down your enemies. Figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are and play according based off of that. Now the next thing that you want to do is break down your opponent. Most people that you 1v1 will have some sort of routine they do, right? Maybe every time when they challenge the head glitch, they climb up on the left side every single time, right? If you can sort of figure that out, every time you go up to challenge the head glitch, you can pre-aim the left side climb up. Who knows, you could even possibly pre-fire. Say for example, maybe on one side your enemy loves just rushing you as quickly as they can. If you know that they're going to rush you every single time, rather than instantly challenging a head glitch, you just might want to instantly check the rush route and maybe even get a couple of easy shots on him on his sprinting. Figure out the patterns that your enemies are doing, take note of it, and try to counteract that as quickly as possible. You also want to figure out what weapons they really like using and see how you could counteract that. See if they just love spraying you down with an R9 as much as possible. If you wanted to counteract that, maybe try pulling out your wingman, peek just for a millisecond, shoot him, and then instantly go back. That way, you are able to output more damage in half of a second than the enemy is with their R9. Figure out what they're doing and counteract that as quickly as you can. Another thing that you should consider is attachments and your settings. Now, first off, with attachments, you want to experiment with different sights. You can experiment with iron sights, 1x, 2x, whatever you're most comfortable with, maybe even a 1 to 2. Who knows, right? It might work out for you. But overall, you just want to figure out what sight works best for you. For example, most people just love using a 1x HCOG on their R9, but who knows, experiment with the hollow, experiment with the 1 to 2, even experiment with the 2x on an R9, because who knows, you might be hitting bigger beams off just by using a different sight. Another thing that you can consider is your FOV, otherwise known as field of view. Play around with it, see, what might give you the best clarity when you're challenging an enemy on the head glitch. For example, I play on 106, it just gives me a little extra zoom and can give me a little bit more clarity when I'm fighting people on the head glitch. Who knows, you might be better on 106, you might be better on 110, you might be better on 90. Experiment with it, see what really works best for you, and who knows, you might just get that edge that you need. Now we're going to be talking about run-ups and climb-ups. Now with run-ups, you have a couple of options. On this side, you can go straight to the middle, to the right side, or to the left. You really have options here. And these climb-ups are important because it makes it so that you avoid that mantling animation, which could essentially be your downfall. People can also climb up from one side and instantly slide to the other, right? And there are sort of two variations that people do. One way is climbing up and going straight across to cover more distance with a slide, and then they peek and start shooting, while another way is to climb up and slide diagonal while still having your enemy in their line of sight. That way, you still have clarity of where your enemy is going to be. However, you aren't sliding and covering as much distance. So figure out which one might work better for you and which might show a greater opportunity on the enemy, and then utilize that to the best of your ability. Another thing you can do is you can always use wall bounces on the rocks as a way to mix it up and be unpredictable as well. You can wall bounce on the left side as well as the right side. Figure out your wall bounces and implement them into your strategy. Next up, we will be talking about certain scenarios. Now imagine this. Someone is on the high ground on the rock looking straight down at you. Rather than swinging wide out into the open, just hug the rock, because hugging the rock forces the enemy to be put in an uncomfortable situation because they don't have the best angle on you. So if they wanted to shoot you, one, it's going to be a really awkward position for them, and two, they might even fall off the rock. Now picture this. Someone has swung way too wide, far out of their cover. Identify this and then realize that you have full control of when any of the peeking between you two begin. So make sure you really utilize it, and you could probably peek, unpeek, peek, unpeek, and really mess around with their head. Try to identify this and, use it to your advantage. Here's a very quick cheesy tip. Whenever you start on this side, you can get some free damage at the beginning just by wide swinging and catching your enemy on the run up. However, note that this can be avoided if the enemies run fast enough and if they start running more to their right side, exiting your LOS. So it doesn't work every time, but try it out. You might get a quick, easy 45 damage or even a nice R9 spray to give you that first lead. One thing that you have to keep in mind is that when you're 1v1ing, there is a better side. Now, the reason why one side is better than the other is because of the head glitch. This side right here, this side is the better head glitch. This might want to influence the way that you want to play, depending if you want to challenge on the worse or better head glitch. Right? Say for example, if you don't want to challenge the head glitch because you have the worst side. Some people are conscious of this, and rather than challenging the head glitch, they would rather just rush you from the side instead, because that might give them a higher opportunity of winning. You can also try to outplay your enemies into switching sides by baiting them into pushing you just for you to rotate over to their good side, and then you can challenge them on the head glitch there. Now I want to talk about how to come back from a deficit. So if you're really low in health and your enemy has a lot more health than you, what you want to do is you want to try to catch the enemies when they're sprinting towards you, and then that way you can get a nasty R99 spray on them while they're in their running animation. If the enemy gets you to one shot, right, most likely they're probably going to push you. So expect that, pre-aim a corner, and then hopefully you can catch them in their sprinting animation. Another thing you can do is that if you're using the wingman, try to poke them to death. Peek for just a second and then go back to cover. That way you can try and deal out as much damage as possible with showing for the least amount of time. Now we'll be talking about strafing. Figure out the best type of strafe that works best against your opponent. And you're going to have to experiment this. Some strafes will work really well and some strafes won't. So figure out, do your longer strafes work? So just walking really wide to one side and then really wide to the other, or maybe should you just be doing really close and tight strafes? Everyone is different, so make sure you experiment with this and see what really messes with your opponent's head. It's also good to mix up your strafing pattern, because if your enemy starts catching onto your pattern, they might know that you take really wide strafes and then expect that, right? So it's always good to mix it up in between matches as well if you're trying to play strategically. Now we're going to cover crosshair alignment. Usually when I hop up on the rock, I'm aiming at the very bottom of the head glitch. And the reason is because when most people crouch spam on this head glitch, they will crouch spam right into a headshot if you're aiming at the right spot. However, you want to be aware that if your enemy is doing the same thing, if they're aiming to a spot where you're just going to crouch into a headshot, then just don't crouch spam, right? If you feel like that you're consistently getting headshot and you're crouch spamming, then don't crouch spam, because they're probably doing the same thing. Yes, you might not be mixing up your hitbox as much, but at least you won't get headshot as easily. Finally, the last tip that I want to cover is abusing your enemy settings. So say for example, say if you know that you're fighting a really low sensitivity player, you might want to put more emphasis into your movement rather than your aim. Now this isn't necessarily all the case, so take this with a grain of salt, but say if you're fighting a really low sensitivity player, you want to try your best to see if you can sort of outmove their sensitivity. So when I go up against a low sensitivity player, what I try to do is I try to jump over their head, because that usually gives me a couple of free shots before their sensitivity can catch up. Right? This doesn't work with everyone, but experiment with it and it might give you the lead that you need. Another thing to consider is what input is your enemy using. And what I mean by this is, are they on controller or are you fighting an M&K player? Say for instance, if you play on controller and you're fighting an M&K player, controller prospers in close range scenarios. So knowing this, you might want to try and push up on an M&K player as much as you can to always have those close range scenarios. Likewise, if you're an M&K player and you know that you're fighting against a controller player, you might want to try to create as much distance between you and that controller player to really minimize their aim assist. Granted, this doesn't always work because some M&K players are better at close range than some controller players, and some controller players are better at long range than M&K players. So take this with a grain of salt, but this is theoretically how you would want to play, assuming everyone was of the same equal skill level. If you want to practice your 1v1s, there's a whole Discord server dedicated to 1v1ing where you can practice against beginners as well as the best around. I linked it down below, so make sure you guys check it out as it's a great way to get some practice in. Well, that's going to be it for my 1v1 guide. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to share down below in the comments your best 1v1 tips and tricks. That way we can all grow and prosper together. If you want to catch me in the range on stream sometimes, you can find me on Twitch at PUBSKI. Usually I stream every single day, so make sure to drop a follow. I'd love to see you guys. Bye. Well, that's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and until next time, peace.